So we are looking right now at Tract 2 at Elm Hollow. Beautiful property. This is just a few feet from Bull Shoals Lake. As we zoom out, you'll see the lake. It's enormous. Not only do you have access to the lake, just a few hundred feet down the road, but you also have the Corp of Engineers Land around the lake that you have access to as well, and that provides hunting similar to national forest. It's basically public land that you can use for hunting. It gives you access to the water. Bull Shoals is a Corp of Engineers Lake, so created and maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers, and the kind of the buffer strip around the water is owned and maintained by the Corps of Engineers as well, so that they can raise and lower the water level way down at the dam in Arkansas. So you can use that to access the shoreline. There's also a kind of a cool primitive boat launch at the south end of the trying to think of the word, south end of the peninsula when you go south on the county road. What we'll mainly do in this video is we'll focus in on Tract 2, and then to get a better look at the area, some more info about Bull Shoals Lake, be sure to check out the intro video on the main page for the tracks at Elm Hollow, and you may have seen that already, but that's gonna be where we spend more time talking about the area. On this one, we're more focused just on this property, just on Tract 2. We've got it shaded here so that you can see it easily. We'll probably turn that shading off in a moment because it does make it hard to see the timber. 6 acres in size. We've got the approximate dimensions on the map here. Let's start up here at the northeast side where it directly borders the county road. That's a gravel county road. That's actually County Road 618, and that borders the entire east side of the property for about 200 feet. As you go southwesterly from the county road, the land slopes down. You actually have a creek bed going across the property. That's going to be a seasonal creek or a wet weather creek. When we were out there were some pools of water in the creek, but it was not flowing. But there were some beautiful kind of rock features and gravel deposits, and it really is quite pretty. So that's neat to see. And then after you cross over the creek and you continue to go to the southwest, the property rises up again. It's the highest, I believe, on the county road side, but we'll switch to a topo map in a second and look at that. Let's go ahead and turn the shading off. Okay. See if we can do this here. So we're using it, I want to call it the MapRight interactive map because that's what we've been calling it for 5, 6, 7 years, but they just changed the name. It's now called Land ID. It's essentially the exact same program, except they feel like they've modernized some of the features and buttons and text and whatnot, but it as far as we can tell, it truly is the exact same program. If you already purchased a property from us and there's a MapRight map in your listing page, it's still going to show up. It's just going to be rebranded as Land ID, just like this one is. You can download the Land ID app, which can be really helpful when you're driving to the property and for exploring the property. The property boundaries are never exact on obviously any app, but it's going to give you a pretty good idea about where things are. So the property is basically 98% wooded. You'll have a couple natural open areas, and you'll have the cleared area where the electric line is. So a couple of the really special things about this property: number one, the location, being so close to Bull Shoals Lake. Let's just quickly zoom out to show you that. So the brown area that you're already seeing over there to the right, that's going to be the part of the Corps of Engineers line around Bull Shoals Lake. Only 16 tracts at Elm Hollow, so it's a small private rural development. Oop, there we go. And there we're looking at a couple of the coves on Bull Shoals Lake. Bull Shoals Lake is enormous. I mean, we saw somewhere that there's close to 1,000 miles of shoreline because of all the coves that were created when they backed up the river in the 1950s, or the multiple rivers. So that the shaded area, as we mentioned, that's the Corp of Engineers Land. So that's what's going to give you access to the water. There are numerous public boat launches in this area. The cool thing that we discovered, though, so the county road that borders Tract 2 goes on down for about a mile and then ends here down at the south side of the tracks at Elm Hollow. And from there, we actually spotted kind of a small trail that kept leading southerly. So we took that trail, and that actually led us right down all the way to the southern tip of this little peninsula on the water. And it was essentially a little private, secluded beach area. Part of it was sandy, a lot of it was more gravel than sand, but it was hard packed. It was a very gradual slope into the water. I felt like if we would have had a pair of jet skis behind us, or a bass boat, or a small or even a mid-sized pontoon boat, I felt like we could have launched it right there at what you would call a primitive boat launch. It was not concreted or anything. It just was looked like the right terrain that you could launch, like I said, jet skis or a bass boat. And we've done that in several different spots on Bull Shoals Lake. I mean, we've loved this area for quite a few years. And we've launched on primitive launches that did not look nearly as nice as this one looked when we were out there. But again, we didn't have a boat with us, so we weren't able to try that out. But from what we could see, it looked really good. Otherwise, if you have a bigger boat, or if you want the comfort of a concrete launch, that's totally fine. There's one just a couple miles away. All you have to do is take County Road 618 back to the west for about a mile. Then you're back to HH Highway. When you came from Theodosia, you went east on Highway 160 over the big bridge over that portion of the river, Bull Shoals Lake, and then you went easterly onto Highway HH. And now, instead of going east onto County Road 618, like you're going to the property, you continue going south on Highway HH, and you go maybe 3 miles, I guess. And HH will come all the way down to the core land. And if we zoom in here, you're going to see there's looks like a popular boat launch area right there. Okay, yeah. So people are probably launching their boats in a primitive fashion in several different spots, but from what I can see here, it looks like the road kind of curves down, and then that's your actual concrete launch right there. Not positive about that. We haven't actually visited that, but that's what it's looking like on the map. So that's nearby. I mean, you've got a beautiful public launch in Theodosia, actually, which in all likelihood would be as quick or quicker than going to that one on HH. We just never thought of that. So if you wanted to go launch from Theodosia, go back to Highway HH, go back to 160 west for about 2 miles. You'll cross the bridge, and then there's a big public launch there on the north and the south, maybe. For sure on the north. The water's pretty high in this satellite photo, but that's a wide concrete launch right there. I mean, you could launch anything in that launch. So you've got a lot of options, which is nice. Options are a good thing. Here's one of the marinas, I guess, in the area. This is right at Theodosia. Can't think of the name of that. Okay. We meant to focus on the property here, but we got sidetracked with Bull Shoals Lake. Alrighty. So we're going to try to get back here. Here we go. Okay, back to track 2. Kind of lost my train of thought. We were talking about the electric line, I think. I don't know how we launched into going to look at Theodosia and the marina. So a couple of the really special things about this tract: heavily wooded, direct county road frontage. The area is phenomenal, being that close to Bull Shoals Lake and the Corp of Engineers take line and land. And then on top of all that, the property literally has electric on site. So you've got a residential power line running across the property. If you've ever had to bring power into a property, if you were building or doing, potentially an RV site or something like that, and you've had to bring property in, it can certainly be done, but it can be a true pain, and it can be extremely expensive as well. Even 20 years ago, when things seemed to be a lot less, it could still be a big chunk of cash to bring in the power. And nowadays, it seems like it's more and more expensive. So to have the line physically on your property already is fantastic. The only thing that could make that a little better is if there happens to be an existing power pole on the property, and we haven't really zoomed in to check on that. Let's switch to a different base map and see if we get a more clear view here. That's a Google base map. Yeah, we've got a power pole right there. You can locate the power poles if you look for the straight shadow that kind of shoots out from the pole. So there's a pole right there. And the reason that's important is that makes it so easy for the power company to get you hooked up with power, because what they can do is they can stick a transformer on that pole and drop a meter onto the pole itself, and you're good to go. So whereas bringing the line in, even just a few hundred yards, you could be looking at several thousand to potentially many thousands of dollars, and a lot of legwork. Maybe having people sign easements. Certainly, if it's a wooded area, you're going to have to pay for very expensive bulldozer work to clean the easement. If you look at this here, obviously that easement's been cleaned already, but that's all so expensive, and it's a lot of hassle. You're meeting bulldozer guys, you're meeting the power engineer, you're meeting everybody, and then it looks awful for a couple years because it's just been bulldozed. You've got trees lying over here, and it's just it's for us, it's not enjoyable. Maybe if we were doing this just as a one-time deal, but after having done it a few times, it's not the funnest process. So hard to overestimate how fantastic it is to have a power line physically on site, and that is the case here on Tract 2. County road frontage, as we mentioned, is great, and obviously the being at the lake area is pretty neat as well. So property, we said earlier, basically about 98% wooded, nice mixture of timber, everything from red oak to white oak to, we saw black walnut trees, which are very pretty and generally about the most valuable tree in the Ozarks once they get nice and big. Elm trees, this is Elm Hollow, and so I'm sure you'll have some elm trees. The guys have seen a few fruit trees in different spots out here. I don't know which tracks in particular, but because this was, I believe in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, kind of a large original homestead. Certainly they had fruit trees planted in different areas. We found sections of a really cool stacked stone rock wall. Again, I'm not sure if that would be on this particular tract. I think the bulk of the kind of the headquarters of the homestead, I believe, was kind of by tracks 5 and 6, but we did find old tools and stuff just all over the place, as far up as tract 1, which is right up here, and then as far south as tract 14 or 15, I believe. So that whichever family was using this land was definitely making use of everything they could. And why don't we go to a topo map? We're going to zoom in a little bit first, see if we can kind of see. You've got what looks like a few natural clearings, and whoops. And since we've explored very little of this property, we really don't know if you'll find any existing trails or clearings or even any small old structures. We've found a couple of those out here, not on tract 2 as far as structures, but we found an old cabin on 5 or 6. Just some cool stuff. It's really neat when there's some history to an area because you don't know what you're going to find. The creek bed is really neat, crossing over the property. Again, that's not a year-round creek, so that's not something that you're going to be able to fish in or put your kayak in or anything like that, but you've got Bull Shoals Lake for that. But having the creek bed gives you the cool rock formations, and it gives you potentially a great source of gravel for landscaping, for building projects. You've got the creek bed, several hundred feet it looks like, of the creek bed going across the property, which is your creek bed. That the gravel would be yours to use, so that's pretty neat as well. Okay, we're going to go ahead and finally go to a topo map and kind of see the lay of the land here. We've got 2 options for topos. We've got the modern one and the vintage one. This is the modern topo. Topos can be confusing. It's definitely helpful when you've been to the area, and since we know that the property is the highest over here on the northeast side by the county road, and as you go southwesterly it slopes down. The big thing to remember about topo maps is the contour lines are indicating an elevation change. And in the case of this map, like most topo maps that we work with, the total elevation change between 2 contour lines is 20 feet. So every 5th line is a darkened line, and then that makes it easy. If we were to zoom out, it would make it easy to see the 100-foot changes. Let's go ahead and do that. Whoop. And the numbers you see, that's all measured above sea level. So when you see that 800, that's the 800-foot above sea level contour line. And it's kind of neat. You can follow that particular line around wherever it goes, and it's always showing you 800 feet above sea level. We know it drops down with the lowest point being the creek bed. So if that's the 800 foot, we're down at about 780 above sea level where the creek bed crosses the property. And then going up from there, we've got the 800, 820, 840, 860, a little over 860 feet above sea level where the county road borders the northeast side of the property. And then on the southwest side, from the creek bed starts to go up, we've got the 800 foot above sea level contour line, 820, 840, and just hits 860 about in there. So check out the ground video, check out the drone video. Certainly you're welcome to physically view any property that's still available on the website. Give us a call first and we can let you know about any gates or any special circumstances, but you're certainly welcome to do that if the property's available. But on this one, from what we can tell, again, it slopes down as you go toward the center. That's where the creek bed is. But this part from the county road to the creek bed does not appear to us to be super steep. It slopes down, but it's a steady slope. And because these contour lines are not stacked right on top of one another, there's a good chance that this probably slopes down, has a spot that levels out, slopes down, has a spot that levels out. And a topo map like this can't really show that because with a 20-foot gradient, I mean, theoretically, you could have a flat surface that then goes up 19 feet and then down to level and then down 19 feet and then back up to level, and it would show as flat on the contour line because it's only showing 20-foot changes or better. But anyway, in this case, there certainly is a slope down as you go down to the creek. But then as we cross the creek, if you look at the spacing on these contour lines, that, based on what we've seen, is probably a safe bet that there are numerous level areas on the other side of the creek bed. So the trend is obviously rising up as you move away from the creek bed, but just looking at the distance between these contour lines really leads us to believe that it's going to be a situation where it rises up, you probably have a pretty good sized level area. Rises up, you might have a very large level area. So it is trending up. I think we did notice, I don't know if it was a ground video or the drone video, that the creek bed itself, once you go across that, now we might have to look at that and see it. We know it rises up, and we didn't see any evidence of any kind of, bluffs or drops or anything like that. So appears to be a usable property. I mean, if you need something that is level or has a huge amount of level area, this is probably not the tract that's going to give you what you want if that's what you're after. But if you're looking for something that has enough reasonably level area to have a nice site, pretty confident this one could do the trick, but certainly you be the judge of that. And I wanted to go to the vintage topo, and this is the topo map that makes us feel old because it's only recently they've started calling that the vintage topo. For 15, 20 years, we just called that the topo map, and now they have the modern topo, so vintage topo or the old guy's topo. And it is a little messy, but the vintage topo in a lot of ways provides more information. And one of the main things is, if you look at this messy looking topo map, the greenish areas, when these maps were created, and this was likely in the 1950s when this topo was created, the green areas were wooded, and the whitish areas, the white areas, were generally an open meadow or an open pasture or something like that. So what this vintage topo is showing us is that actually the northeast several hundred feet of this property at one point was an open pasture or meadow. So as we look at that, and that was probably done, maybe they had animals there, maybe they were growing hay there. It's hard to say, we just don't know. But if we kind of look at that whitish area, and then we'll flip to one of the aerial maps, and we'll see if we can kind of almost visualize where the meadow was. Well, in a way you can. So at some point, if we go back here, and this is where it's kind of fun. So the white area encompasses both sides of the county road, and it's probably fair to say that at some point, both sides of the county road were owned by the same family. They were, farmed or homesteaded or lived upon by the same family. And then at some point, when the stuff on the other side of the county road was sold off, and someone else built homes there, they actually maintained that open meadow or pasture. So you can see that around their yards. The people who own the property on the other side decided that it wasn't something they wanted to do to maintain it or keep animals on it or whatnot. So they let that grow back up in timber. And that was quite some time ago because there are some mature trees on here. So if that topo map was done in the 1950s, that'd be roughly 70 years, which kind of would jive with some of the trees we saw in there. There's certainly some trees that would appear to be 50, 60, 70 years old, maybe more. But that's just one of the fun things about looking at the different maps, and that's one of the cool things about MapRight or Land ID is that it's so easy to switch the base maps from a topo map to the different aerial maps. And most of the aerial maps are similar. Google map, that's this one. The Google map is generally the most detailed. But you've also got, this is just labeled satellite. All the aerials are satellite maps, but this one's labeled satellite. And that shows it at a different time of year. So that's going to be more like a springtime map of the property, and that's useful as well because that can help us kind of decipher what sections have hardwood trees versus which sections have maybe cedars and pines. The darker colored greenish spots are likely either cedar trees or pine trees. And this is something else. If you let's zoom out a little bit, you look at the area on the southwest side of the property, and most of those trees have leafed out. You look at the area on the northeast side, and most of those trees have not. And that's just a function of the way the slope of the ground is facing. So that's another reason that it's just fun to goof off with these interactive maps and switch the base maps. And so here we've got essentially a wintertime base map. That's called hex aerial. I have no idea why it's called hex aerial, but that's going to be a late fall or wintertime. And that's useful as well because we can see, if you look here at probably more the hardwood timber on the southwest side, you've got all kinds of different species of trees. You've got these golden leaves. You've got some that have lost their leaves. It looks like quite a while ago. You've got some evergreens, which could be pine or cedar. These ones are probably pine because they look fairly tall. Cedars just don't get that tall generally. And then as we go up here more toward the northeast part, those trees have pretty much all lost their leaves when this aerial was taken. But you could spend a lot of time on these interactive maps, and we do. If you want to get a subscription to Land ID, I forget what it costs. I think it's around $20 a month, and then you'll have a few more options, probably as far as base layers, and you can create your own maps. You can save your own maps, but unless MapRight or Land ID has changed drastically, you should still be able to certainly view the maps on the listing page, but you should still be able to open them if you download the free app. So we have had a couple people tell us that, yeah, they were able to download the app, but they had to sign up for a trial version for a week or whatnot, and that may be the case. I wish we had control over that, but obviously we don't. We don't own Land ID or MapRight, same company. But if you're coming out to view the property, maybe that's a good time to get the trial version, and after a week, if it's something you're not going to use, certainly don't pay for it. You can just cancel the service or whatnot. So, but anyway, yet again, what was supposed to be a quick intro has stretched to a much longer intro. Check out the drone video, the ground video, all that good stuff. Track 2 is super nice. Love it. Someone's going to have a gorgeous property here with Track 2 at Elm Hollow. This is Ozark County, Missouri, just seconds from Bull Shoals Lake.